So for our final panel of the afternoon today, we're going to be examining entrepreneurs as envoys, the role of small business in North American diplomacy. My name is Sean Moore. I'm the Democratic Staff Director of the U.S. Senate Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship, and I'm thrilled to have this distinguished panel of experts with me today. Let me introduce them now for you. On my immediate left, we have Fernando Diaz, the General Director of Productive Development at the Mexico Ministry of Economy. Rosalind Stewart, Assistant Chief Counsel at the SBA Office of Advocacy. Bill Katay, Secretary and Executive Director at AmCham Canada. And finally, Victor Lugo, the founder and CEO of Mex Skeletons. Let's give them a nice round of applause. So I'm going to start off here with just a very general, broad question for the entire panel. As we've heard today, North America's small business landscape has changed dramatically over the last couple of years. From each of your vantage points, what is the most significant shift shaping how small businesses operate across borders? And Fernando, why don't we start with you?
Of course, thank you, and may I first thank everyone here for being here, and thank you, Sean, and thank you for the invitation to this wonderful panel. Regarding your question, Sean, I think the most significant change would be a recognition of how SMEs operate. SMEs, unlike big corporations, operate largely through personal relationships, that allows them to be more nimble, efficient. The owners are usually involved or heavily involved in the decision-making progress, which in turn helps them to recognize any challenges, to quickly address any misunderstandings, any cultural issues. And I think now, in our case, this has been dutifully recognized through the addition of Chapter 25 in the USMCA, and we have recognized the value in this, the three countries, and the value in using these learnings, and maintaining close contact with SMEs in order to address larger issues. Thank you.
So Rosalind, you've studied this issue quite a bit in your role at Advocacy. What do you have to say about this?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Sean. So, what I've seen as the most significant shift is the uncertainty surrounding the landscape, the changing landscape in trade. Small businesses want a degree of certainty about what regulations they need to comply with, what duties they're going to have to pay, and they also want time to adjust to those new requirements. A second shift I'd highlight is just the increasing complexity and kind of overly broad scope of foreign regulations. Regulatory barriers are the #1 non-tariff barrier for U.S. businesses. So they're equivalent to a 20% tariff rate for exporters, and affect approximately 93% of goods exported annually. Just to touch on a brief example of this is EU deforestation regulation. The intent of which is to ensure that goods consumed by European citizens don't contribute to forest degradation of places with significant ecosystems, such as rainforests and endangered species habitats. EU determined that 70% of deforestation was illegal, 30% is legal. And so that regulation imposes due diligence and traceability requirements for all deforestation, regardless of the legality. So it doesn't consider that some land use can be rotational. While it may be used for agriculture, by one generation, it can be subsequent generations can return it to timber production. A small farmer in Georgia was impacted by this regulation when he cleared some timber from a portion of his land so he could use it for agriculture. And then he wasn't aware this regulation existed. He learned about it when he couldn't find any lumber mills to take his timber because of the traceability requirements. And this, ultimately resulted in a significant loss to him of capital. So, the cumulative impacts of foreign regulations stifling legal domestic economic activity and upstream supply chain inputs is the kind of shift that concerns me the most.
Bill, what are you seeing from the Canadian perspective?
Well, first of all, if this was a final exam, people would think I'd be cheating off Rosalind's test, because I'm pretty much going to say the same thing she is. Look, when you're an entrepreneur, you're trying to model the future, right? You're looking at where you are now, where you want to be, how do you get there? You want to have some certainty in the present. Now, we're not going to get that. There are going to be changes in the economy. There are going to be changes in technology. I heard there's something called AI going around. And there are other dynamics that will force small, medium-sized businesses to have to adapt and change. One thing that we don't need is to have governments and regulatory authorities add to that uncertainty. We talk about tariffs and we talk about the economic cost of tariffs, but there's a huge administrative cost, especially if you got a supply chain from multiple countries. And now you gotta figure out, okay, what percent comes from this country, what's the tariff there? What comes from that country, what's the tariff there? And you're trying to figure out, how do you get your product dealing with all this? And by the way, when you do regulations, businesses are smarter than that. They will figure a way around it. So it becomes a whack-a-mole type of situation, cat and mouse, where there's a dynamic that leads to uncertainty. And I think small and medium-sized enterprises, more than anything else, want to come up with as certain an environment as possible so they can concentrate on their business, they can concentrate on what they need to do, on their employees, on their stakeholders, and on their products.
So, Victor, you're one of our newest successful entrepreneurs. You have firsthand experience with these issues. Can you explain a little bit what you've gone through over the last couple of years?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm very honored to be here. Yeah, I have some in-field experience. I'm an entrepreneur. I started my business over 6 years ago. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the story of my business because it's very important to this topic. I was living in Canada, in Toronto. I was studying my bachelor's degree there, and I was working in a Mexican restaurant as a server. Working as a server, I realized that there was a lot of opportunities to sell Mexican products in Canada, specifically in Toronto where I was living. So talking to the customers, I realized that opportunity, and I started to think how to bring Mexican products into Canada. I started building the business plan. My idea was to sell these hand-painted decanter sets, like hand-painted bottles, which are very Mexican, that I'm going to show you in a bit. And yeah, I started working on the business, but obviously it was very hard for me because I was studying, I was working at the same time, and maybe it wasn't the right time. And I got into a entrepreneurship contest, like Shark Tank in a college there in Canada, and I won the third prize. So that gave me a lot of confidence to start my business. And I was just about to start my business. My main idea back then was to import these products and then export those products, import them into Canada, and then supply them in Mexican places in Canada. Unfortunately, this was during the pandemic. The pandemic hit. I lost my job. I was unemployed. I didn't have school. I didn't have nothing. But I had the investment that I got from this entrepreneurship contest that I won. So I said, like, you know what? This is still a great product. I'm going to try to sell it online. And that's when I start to take some pictures outside of my house. And then I uploaded into Etsy, these e-commerce platforms. And sales started coming from Canada, from the US, mainly from the US. And I started to make the shipments. And then when I got a lot of sales, I decided to come back to Mexico to pursue the business, to work with these artisans and start to building like a supply, like a production line for this product. And I started to acquire more and more artisans. And it was very important because it was during the time where artisans didn't have, there was no tourism because of the pandemic, so artisans didn't have anything to sell for the tourists, but there were no tourists. And that's how sales started to come in. And then I got into Amazon a couple of years later. And then it got to a point where I had 25 artisans working, and mainly everything is exported to the US, but we have shipped to over 25 countries, our products. So, and thinking about the question that you asked me, how has it changed for small businesses? I feel like these e-commerce platforms really give me an opportunity to sell with such little cost. Just imagine my business, trying to do my business 30 years ago, it wouldn't be possible because I will have to find an exporter, find an importer, and then maybe a supplier and too many intermediaries to get to the final client. With these e-commerce platforms such as Amazon, Etsy, I go directly to the customer. And I don't have to set up a store in the US like I would have to maybe have done 30 or 40 years ago. and it was just pretty easy since the beginning. So I think that's one of the things that really have changed from previous years on how is it working for small businesses like me.
Has some of the uncertainty that Bill talked about with tariffs and other, government regulations, has that created uncertainty in your business at all?
Yeah, definitely. This year was really hard for us with this new Trump administration and all the tariffs that we all know. Even though Mexico is under the same commercial agreement, we're still getting charged customs on all our products starting on September. Even though we have sent all the information, all the paperwork required to be exempted from these custom charges, we're still getting charged. And that's something that maybe both the Mexican government and the US government should give small businesses, especially the ones who export, more information on how to be on that exception list for the commercial agreement that we have. So yeah, definitely.
Thank you, and congratulations on your business. I next want to, this panel is looking at small business as diplomats, as bridge builders. Why are small businesses so uniquely qualified to fill that role, especially compared to large businesses that maybe aren't as nimble or as close to their customers? Fernando, do you want to take a shot at that?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Sean. As we've seen, or as we've just talked about, small businesses, as we know, or rather, small businesses are very nimble, are very dynamic, and are quick at finding solutions. I think that giving the SMEs the visibility they now have, and giving them a place at the table for USM negotiations specifically, has allowed us to make clear that shared purpose that we have between three countries, and to keep politics out of other discussions. I can say that in our early talks between three countries, the chapter 25 and other chapters as well, after a thorough analysis, is one of the chapters that is working well, and that has achieved its objectives. And we're using that and other chapters as well that are also successful as leverage during negotiations, to make clear that there are things that are working well, that and to go above and beyond, and to think of other things that we can add to them, and on the day-to-day practice, as I would say, this is very clear. I had the honor of leading Mexico's delegation a few weeks ago to the fourth USMCA SME dialogue in Phoenix, Arizona, and it was very motivating for me to see that there were a lot of of course, business people from three countries, but also politicians from both parties in the US, local and federal, and everyone agreed that this is something that has to be valued, that can be improved, and that the shared purpose that we have comes above everything else. And all discussions, so when you have that base, you can in which you already agree, and find value, then the what comes next is just how to improve it. So it allows us for a shared platform, and a shared purpose, and I think that's wonderful. Thank you.
Bill, would you agree with that shared purpose is critical when it comes to small businesses being those bridge builders?
Absolutely, because in the end, what small businesses are interested in is solutions, and they will go for wherever the solutions are, wherever that will be, and when they look for those solutions, they will find partners, because they want the job done right with whomever the right partner is. That builds collaboration, and collaboration is what makes diplomacy. The good thing about a small business is they can sort of focus on the core of what they're doing. They don't have the ability to think about all those secondary and tertiary knock-on effects. They're like, what do I need to do to put my business in a position where it is? And that leads them to find people, companies in other countries, in other cultures, to work towards a common goal. And to me, that's diplomacy.
Would you agree, Roslyn?
Yes, I would. Just kind of building off of what Bill said. when a small manufacturer in Texas sources components from a supplier in Monterey, that's typically, not a transactional relationship that's managed by like a procurement department. It's, the owner of the business on the phone, maybe visiting the facility and working through, problems directly. So when something goes wrong, there's a conversation between people who need each other to succeed. And, small business owners build trust across borders through years of reliable dealings, shared problem solving, and mutual respect. And they learn each other's systems, adapt to each other's constraints, and often advocate for each other when regulatory barriers arise. And that's one of the reasons my office focuses on regulatory barriers that disproportionately burden small entities, because every time we add compliance costs that larger firms can absorb more easily, we're not just disadvantaging the small businesses economically, we're diminishing this ground level diplomacy that strengthens the broader relationship.
Thank you for that. Victor, you talked a little bit about your business. How have you used your business to promote Mexican culture, and how have you been able to expand to other countries?
Well, actually, I decided to bring one of my products so people can know, because it's harder to explain. Might as well just show you what I do. I do these hand-painted decanter sets, and I feel like they speak about Mexico without saying anything, just with the... Also, I feel like without saying anything, this says Mexico in front of everyone. But yeah, so are all hand-painted by Mexican artists from Guerrero and Mexico City. We have the whole workshop, and we have the production line. And obviously, like I said, this is Mexico without saying anything. But most importantly, like I said, we export all our products mainly to the US. And most of our customers are Mexicans and Mexican relatives that live in the US. And this is like a Mexican gift between Mexican friends, Mexican relatives, people with Mexican background. This is a gift to give during Christmas or during their birthdays. So yeah, that's one way that my business obviously is connected through the culture, because people relate this product with Mexico. And not only Mexicans or Mexican relatives, also people from the US that have traveled to Mexico and value these kind of handicrafts and want to be more in touch with this culture. But I also feel like I'm that bridge with these artisans who otherwise wouldn't be able to have their products be shipped to over 20 countries. Because in other scenario, tourists will come to Mexico and they will get these products. And that will be the only way to get these products. But now I feel like I'm the bridge with the help of these e-commerce platforms, Amazon, Etsy, to make this artwork of these artisans expand to whichever country I can make a shipment to via DHL, obviously. And I feel like that's a way to promote Mexican culture and also to promote the artwork that these artisans are doing. And I feel like that's the way that Mexican culture is done via these kind of products.
And you mentioned the artisans, and I think we all agree that human talent is a key bridge between countries. And Fernando, how do SMEs develop, attract, or exchange talent between the US, Mexico, and Canada? And how does this human capital contribute to strengthening trilateral collaboration and competitiveness?
Thank you, Sean. I would answer that human capital and talent is at the center of North American competitiveness, no? And SMEs are at the very core of that, because they can develop talent faster than large corporations. In the case of Mexico, nearshoring is accelerating that need for talent strongly. Just during Q3 of this year, Mexico attracted $41 billion of foreign investment, or foreign direct investment, which is a record for Mexico. Mexico is providing a strong pipeline of talent to address that, to address that investment, and to with around 860,000 graduates from STEM degrees each year, with a median age of 30 years old. SMEs in Mexico are known to adopt technology rapidly in the three countries, really. Integrate supply chains and solve cross-border issues, as we've seen. Mexico is also designing no, or rather launching a series of initiatives with several big companies, no, and some of the biggest employers in Mexico. We recently launched an initiative designed to, no, we mentioned AI, no, to train, no, around or 500,000 people in cloud computer skills and AI during the next 3 years with AWS as well. We launched an initiative as well with Banco Santander, no, focused on SMEs, no, and most recently, no, to address Mexico's no, historic productivity problem, no, in which that it's summed up basically in that no, Mexicans are or Mexico, no, reports being one of the countries that, no, whose workers work the most hours, no, or some of the most hours, but with low productivity. No, so in order to address that, we're looking into reducing the 48-hour week to 40 hours. No, the way in which this would be implemented, it's still being ironed out. I would just say that, no, this is being done in close consultation with the private sector and the large, no, and at the most, no, is this it has been agreed that it would be done in a gradual scheme, no, during the next years. But yes, that would be my answer to that.
Well, thank you for that. I know that, you know, strong labor protections are important to, you know, small businesses across the board. Bill, Roz talked a little bit about the, you know, the international rules of the road and regulations. How does that affect the U.S.-Canadian relationship? I know things have been a little bit difficult over the last year, given the sort of the chaotic tariff announcements and some of the incendiary comments from President Trump. How are the small businesses in Canada and the U.S. working to maintain those relationships?
Well, I think it's, you know, first of all, the Canadian populace has been, let's just say, I'm trying to find, see, this is where my diplomacy is lacking. I need to find the right word. Let's just say they're a little reluctant about, you know, being as tight with the U.S. as they used to be. But with business, with small and medium-sized enterprises, they're like, okay, things have changed, now what? You know, they know that the two economies are too tightly integrated. You're not going to separate them, right? That there will always be advantages to having the two countries work together. Geography, you know, common legal system, you know, and, you know, also frequent familial ties. You'll often know if families are half in the U.S., half in Canada. So there's that sense that, you know, how do we adapt? How do we grow? How do we be able to become resilient despite what is thrown at us? And I think that's what Canadian businesses are doing. So they're maintaining and actually increasing their ties to the U.S., and also they're looking at other logical partners like Mexico. So, you know, if there's good news, is the resiliency of the small and medium-sized enterprise has been proven through this period.
Well, great. Thank you for that. We just have a few minutes remaining, so I wanted to end with another broad question for all of our panelists. And that's as you know, as we look forward, what can the governments of Mexico, Canada, and the U.S. do to better support entrepreneurs who are looking to work across the continent? And Fernando, perhaps we could start with you again, if that's okay.
Yes, of course. So in the case of Mexico, I would just mention one thing. No, during the last administration, financing for SMEs, no, was mostly cut off. No, and it was and financing was largely left towards the private sector. No, in this administration, we have sought to address that through a two-pronged strategy. One has been an agreement with the private banks of Mexico, with the Association of the Mexican Banks, the ABM, no, to increase financing from the private sector, or private sector financing, up to 30%, no, towards all SMEs, no, from around 12 that has been the historic number. No, we've seen an increase in that. We are almost to that goal. No, and on the other hand, we have also at the Ministry of Economy, no, have sought to reclaim, no, that the industrial policy tool that we did not have, that was public sector financing from the private sector. No, from the public sector, we have just launched a new initiative, no, in order to do so, no, to identify those startups that need financing in Mexico. We launched it very recently, no, last week, and well, we've started with 800 million pesos. We are aim to increase that to 1.6 billion by next year. Well, yes, and I would say that those are the two things now that we were seeking to do that are largely needed.
Great, thank you for that. Roz?
Hit mine really quickly. I think we can start by expanding cross-border regulatory harmonization. I feel like that would help small businesses across the trading bloc. Increasing awareness and accessibility of export support programs. So SBA has export financing. We also have U.S. export assistance centers, and I'm constantly getting contacted by small businesses looking for assistance with trade or tariffs, and we have so much kind of free counseling at SBA and at these USIACs that most are not aware of. So they should be taking advantage of these. Their tax-paying dollars are going to that. So. Also strengthening supply chain integration and SME inclusion through procurement initiatives and small business matchmaking events. And then lastly, fostering transparency and predictability, as we've touched on many times. SMEs are more vulnerable to sudden regulatory changes, as we know, and tariff fluctuations and trade disputes. So the more predictability that small businesses have, the better.
Bill?
3 words: listen to Victor. Really. I mean, we're smart, we do things, we have white papers or whatever, but you're where the rubber meets the road. And so you should talk to those who regulate small businesses and say, we're having problems in this area, and hopefully they can be receptive to what you say. Because to be honest, you do more for making companies as envoys than anything AmCham can do, no matter how smart we are, no matter how well researched our white papers are, how well we're connected with our communities. It's what you do that helps small businesses carry the message of bringing countries together, bringing people together over a common idea. And one other thing I want you to take away from this, X25, if you take away nothing else, Canada is a hotbed of innovation, isn't it?
Yeah, I know that for a fact. Well, thank you so much for the words. I really appreciate
I'm going to take Bill's advice and give Victor the last word.
Yeah, like Bill said, for me, as a business owner, it's been really hard this year because of all the new requirements and the new tariffs that were imposed on all countries. But the fact that it's also imposing on Mexico, given that we're in the same commercial agreement, is something that I'm obviously not okay with. And even though the government of Mexico didn't give me any information, nor the government of the US, I got myself into a custom broker, and then I still find the paperwork that I needed to fulfill in order for me to not get charged customs, but I'm still getting charged customs. And that's really taking a burden, especially given the fact that I'm a small business, and I should be taking advantage of these tariffs exemptions, and I'm not. So that's something that maybe more information on what's going on and how we can help each other because we're in the same commercial agreement. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. And let's give a round of applause to our, not just this panel, but all of our panelists today. What a fantastic job.